So how can a simple 10-minute test possibly tell us anything about a disease that starts, get this, more than 20 years before the first symptom? Well, today on The Explainer, that's exactly what we're breaking down. How a quick questionnaire gives us a really important window into the long, slow journey of Alzheimer's disease. I think this quote is the perfect place to start. Framing Alzheimer's as a journey is just so important because, this isn't something that just happens overnight. It's a process, one that actually begins completely silently, decades before anyone even notices a problem with their memory. So, just how long are we talking about for this silent first chapter? The answer is, well, it's pretty staggering, and it's absolutely key to understanding why detection is such a challenge.
Okay, just look at this timeline. It's kind of mind-blowing. The biological machinery of Alzheimer's can kick off more than 2 whole decades before anyone feels like something's wrong. First, you get this buildup of a protein called beta amyloid. Then, maybe a decade later, another protein, tau, starts to form tangles. And it's only after all that, after this long, quiet process, that the symptoms we all associate with the disease, like memory loss, finally start to show up.
So what's really going on inside the brain during all those silent years? Let's zoom in and break down the 3 key biological signs of the disease.
First up is beta amyloid. Now, in a healthy brain, this protein is just cleared away, no problem. But in Alzheimer's, it starts to build up outside the brain cells, and it forms these sticky, nasty clumps. You can really just think of them as gunk that's clogging up all the critical communication lines between your neurons.
At the same time, you've got a whole other problem brewing inside the brain cells. There's this protein called tau. Its job is to keep things stable. But here, it goes completely rogue. It starts twisting itself into these things called tangles, which basically clog up the cell's internal highway system, starving it from the inside out.
So, you've got this 1-2 punch, plaques on the outside, tangles on the inside. And the result of all that damage is the widespread death of brain cells. This process is called neurodegeneration. And as millions, then billions of cells die off, the brain itself actually begins to shrink. That condition is known as brain atrophy.
And this is such a critical point. Look, our brains do shrink a little bit as we get older. That's totally normal. But what the science clearly shows is that the brain shrinkage in Alzheimer's is way faster and much, much more severe. This isn't just a part of getting older, it's a full-on disease process. All of this brings us to a huge problem, right? If the disease starts so quietly, how can anyone possibly get an early hint of what's going on in the brain? This is where a simple screening tool becomes so incredibly valuable. Doctors will often use a test called the Mini Mental State Examination, or the MMSE for short. It's basically a 30-point questionnaire that takes about 10 minutes to go through. Now, the key thing to get here is that it's not a diagnosis. It's more like a quick snapshot, a picture of a person's cognitive health at one specific moment in time.
So what can you really find out in just 10 minutes? Turns out, quite a lot. The test is cleverly designed to check out a whole range of thinking skills, not just memory. The MMSE looks at 5 core things. It kicks off with orientation, simple stuff like, do you know what day it is? Then it checks memory by asking you to remember and repeat a few words. It'll test your attention with some basic math and your language skills by seeing if you can follow a few instructions. And finally, it even checks your visuospatial skills, usually by asking you to copy a simple drawing. Here's a classic example from the test. Now, counting backward from 100 by 7s might sound easy, but think about it. It forces you to hold a number in your head, do a calculation, and remember the rule, all at the same time. It's a fantastic, quick-fire test of your attention and working memory.
Or how about this one? It's a 3-stage command, and it's a great test of both language and your ability to plan and execute a task. Can the person hear it, understand it, remember all 3 steps, and then actually do them in order? Every single step gets a point. And then you have this. It seems so basic, right? But this question is a direct test of a person's orientation to time. For every correct answer, the year, the season, the date, they get a point. And as simple as it sounds, this can be one of the very first things to be affected by cognitive decline.
So all those points are added up for a final score out of 30. And as you can see, this gives clinicians a rough guide. A score up in the high 20s is generally considered normal.
But as that score drops, it can be the first real, measurable sign that someone might be dealing with mild, moderate, or even severe cognitive issues. But, and this is probably the most important thing to take away, the MMSE has its limits. Big time. It's a quick screen, remember, not a final diagnosis. And its accuracy can be thrown off by things like how much education someone has. That means it can sometimes miss subtle problems in certain people. And just because someone has a low score, it doesn't automatically mean they're going to get dementia. It's just one clue in a much, much bigger investigation.
So here's what it all boils down to. A simple 10-minute test can give us the very first faint signal of a journey that actually started quietly 2 decades earlier. It really highlights the incredible value, but also the huge challenge of trying to spot this disease early. And that leaves us with this really critical question: what's next? As our understanding grows, what new windows will we invent to see into the brain even earlier and with even more clarity? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.